أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Picking up with the legendary military ideology of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The legendary military ideology consisting of the era of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, after completing subsequent videos on the legendary military nation or empire, whichever one chooses to or prefers to cite such, and also the legendary military government or governance, whichever again one chooses to consider that series as well. The era of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan, the era of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, and the legendary military legacy of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, as well as the legendary military career of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Madanite period. Now we're picking up with your humble orator from page number 63. Let's take a look here. Let's give one brief pause. Oh, very well. We're glad we actually, yes, thank you for that that very important correction. So yes, page number 72, the second paragraph, because this was after the fighting broke out. On the other hand, and this is your humble and respected orator, Muhammad Israel. And one more disclosure, we're in volume 2, not volume 1. Second paragraph, page number again, 72. On the other hand, Talha, who was on his mount with the people rushing around him, called out, saying, "O people, can you listen?" But they continued to rush and did not listen to him. He did not say any more. Then, "Woe to you, moths to flame, and greed is killing them." Were there any moths other than those Saba'is, and was there any greed other than among them? Rather, the attempts to bring about reconciliation, continued until the last moment of the battle. From this discussion, the impact of Ibn Saba and his helpers, the Saba'is, on the battle becomes clear. We can also see clearly, beyond any shadow of doubt, that the keenness of the companions radiallahu anhum to reconcile and unite, this is the truth which is confirmed by the text and of which one may feel certain. Before discussing the stages of the battle, we should point out that the impact of the Saba'is in the battle of the Camel is something that all scholars agree upon, whether they call themselves evildoers, thugs of the two parties, the murderers of Uthman, the fools, or hooligans, or they refer to them clearly as Saba'is. The following are some texts that are in reference or contain this. A. It says in Akbar al-Masrah by Umar ibn Shubba that those to whom the murder of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu was attributed were afraid that the two parties might reconcile and agree to kill them. So they started the fight between them, and there happened what happened. And that's A. B. Imam At-Tahawi said, open quote, "The fitna of the Camel broke out against the wishes of both Ali radiallahu anhu and Talha ibn Ubaidullah. Rather, it was stirred up by the wrongdoers against the wishes of the aforementioned." C. Al-Baqilani said, open quote, "A deal was reached and they parted when both groups were content with the deal. But the killers of Uthman radiallahu anhu were afraid that they would be caught and brought to justice. So they got together and discussed the matter, and they differ, and the difference or their difference concerning it. Then they agreed to split into two groups and start the fight at dawn in both camps. When they were scattered throughout the camps, the group in Ali's camp would shout out, Talha and Zubayr have betrayed us. And the group in the camp of Talha and Zubayr would shout out, Ali has betrayed us. They succeeded in their plan and fighting broke out. Each of the two parties was limiting themselves or itself to defend itself and trying not to let the bloodshed go beyond that. This is the correct approach on the part of both parties, showing restraint for the sake of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, as fighting broke out and they had to defend themselves. This is what happened according to the sound reports, and this is what we believe. D. Al-Qadi Abdul Jabbar narrated the views of the scholars, which is that Ali and Talha and Aisha radiallahu anhum reached a peace deal and agreed to avoid war and to defer dealing with the issue of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan's murder. Those of the enemies of Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu who were in the camp did not like that, and they were afraid that the Muslimin would focus their efforts on dealing with them, so they planned to disrupt that, as is well known, and that was achieved. C. Al-Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi said, open quote, Ali radiallahu anhu came to Basra, and the two camps came together to talk, but the people of whims and desires did not leave them alone. They hastened to shed blood and war broke out. There were a large number of thugs who decided to start the fight so that the murderers of Uthman radiallahu anhu would not be brought to justice. One person in the army could spoil its plan, so what if there were 1,000? F. Ibn Hazm said, open quote, the evidence for that is that the two armies drew close together and no fighting broke out. But when night came, the murderers of Uthman radiallahu anhu realized that any agreement reached by the two parties would be against them. They attacked the camp of Talha and Zubayr at night, wielding the sword against them. The people had to defend themselves, so they pushed them back until they reached the camp of Ali radiallahu anhu. Then Ali's people had to defend themselves, each group no doubt thinking that the other had initiated the fighting. There was a great deal of confusion, but no one went beyond defending himself. The evildoers and killers of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu persisted in their attempts to make the fighting continue, and each group thought that it was doing the right thing in defending itself. Talha was hit by a stray arrow while he was standing. Not knowing what was happening, the arrow struck a wound in his lower leg, which he had received at the Battle of Uhud. While defending the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he left the battlefield and died soon after. Az-Zubayr ibn Awam radiallahu anhu left while the battle raged. He was killed after he had withdrawn from the battle. In Wadi As-Siba, which is less than a day march from Basra, that is what happened. Al-Dahabi said, open quote, the battle of the camel was stirred up by the foolish among the two groups. He also said the two groups had reconciled and neither Ali nor Talha intended to fight. Rather, their intention was to bring about unity. But the thugs of the two parties traded arrows and fighting broke out and engulfed everyone. In the book Dua al-Islam, it says, open quote, fighting broke out because of the thugs, and Ali and Talha, Zubayr as well, were no longer in control. Dr. Sulaiman ibn Hamad al-Awda said, open quote, we may say that the report of At-Tabari, which speaks of the Sabai rule in the Battle of the Camel, is referring to the same people who are described as thugs in other reports. Even if these thuggish groups which are referred to in other reports did not have a direct connection to the Saba'is or share the same aims and goals, it is possible that these thuggish groups became the element that Ibn Sabah and his helpers took advantage of, which is usually the case in some demagogic movements that may be taken advantage of by some evildoers. We should not forget that the atmosphere of turmoil played a major role in these events. There can be no doubt that at times of chaos, people may not be able to see things that others can see very clearly. They may have their own justification for doing things, while others can clearly see the reality of what they are doing without any effort. The darkness of turmoil is sufficient to prevent a person from thinking carefully and seeing clearly. For example, we may note that Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais, who is one of those who lived through the events of this battle, went out with the aim of joining Ali ibn Abi Talib's army radiallahu anhu, but he was met by Abu Bakr, who said, "O Ahnaf, go back, for I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, if two Muslims face one another with swords, then the slayer and the slain would be in hellfire." I said, or it was said, "O Messenger of Allah, as for the slayer, his case is clear, but what about the one who was slain?" He said he wanted to kill his companion. Fighting alongside Ali was radiallahu anhu was right and correct, and whoever was killed fighting alongside him is a martyr and will have two rewards. However, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was quoting a hadith that was mentioned in a different context to that in which Ali radiallahu anhu was fighting those who were transgressing. This was his own understanding, but it was not appropriate in Ali radiallahu anhu's case. From this report, we understand that Ali radiallahu anhu faced many obstacles when he radiallahu anhu fought others, including fatwas like these, which reflect piety more than the correct fatwa issued for the correct situation. Al-Ahnaf refused to join Ali radiallahu anhu, so he was not present with either side in the battle of the camel. Inshallah, we will end this one here on page number 76. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.